Welcome back, everyone. Here we are, episode 3 of the Deliberate Dropout for 2022, at least. Today we got a really fun topic today, and Mitchell has a great thread that he put together on Twitter on this, and we're just gonna dive deep into some of the content one-on-one. So anytime when it comes to building your career and just some of the work that you're doing, there's always this healthy balance between working and learning out loud.
Yeah.
So Mitchell has a lot of insight into this. So I guess the first question that naturally comes up is, when do you start talking about your competence and how you do the work and how good you are at it? And then when's the time where you just shut up, man, put your head down, like just get to work, right? Just focus on building that core skill. What would you say? How would you go about that?
Yeah, man, this is a fun topic. I had to unpack this on Twitter a little bit and kind of like break it down into simple ideas. A recent Praxis apprentice asked me about something to this effect, and I immediately thought back to kind of the time and place in my career where there was this urge. I think a lot of young people, especially the highly ambitious, highly competent, like quick learner, sort of like self-directed learning types, you feel this tendency early on in your career to, like, a lot of people call it imposter syndrome, but you feel this tendency to, like, I want to fake it till I make it, or I do not want to appear as somebody who doesn't know the answer to questions, who doesn't have all the solutions. I want to have all the ideas because I want to be reliable. I want people to think I'm smart and capable and I'm like reliable and all the other positive attributes of kind of a high performing individual, high performing employee. And I think that, one, I made a lot of mistakes. I'll just preface this. I did this wrong in a variety of different capacities early on in my career. I was probably showier and a little bit more loudmouth and like probably a little bit too prone to seek attention, and don't do those things. But I think that some of the early things you can do is just, one, shut up and do the work first before you worry about getting credit. Do not worry about getting credit early on in your career. There's a time and place where you give credit where it's due, and you've got to, like, you may want to get yours for lack of a better term, but that's not at the start of your career. If you're doing valuable work and you're showing up early, you're staying late, you're hustling, you're crushing it, all the different dimensions of and scope of your responsibility, you're just somebody who's reliable. That is the best signal you can send early on in your career. Nobody expects you to have it all figured out. So there's kind of this gap between, I'm an entry-level employee, here's what my boss hired me for. It's literally the bar is so low. They don't expect much out of you. But if you can perform at 20% better than your role consistently, that is a margin of excellence. Like you are already going to build a favorable impression. You're going to begin forging a reputation for yourself as somebody who's reliable and skilled and has a lot of potential, and somebody who's like worth investing in longer term. But I think you've got to be careful early on to not take that desire to be seen as more than you are today and go and feign competence that you haven't earned yet. I think that, especially in today's era where I literally, anytime you go on Instagram, you're going to see like so many people posting, especially these like personal finance accounts that, attract a lot of Gen Zers. You're going to see all these people posting about how, follow me, I'm 18 and live wherever I want and have 7 figures. And it's just, that's unrealistic. There's, for every one of those individuals that, made it out, broke through the glass ceiling at age 18 or in their early 20s, there are probably 10 million young adults that have no idea. And there are probably, just as many people who, they're trying to figure it out. And that's just unrealistic for them. And it's not the trajectory they're on. And so I also think that that's a little bit off-putting. If you're somebody who's like shouting from the rooftops when you're in the early innings of your career. There's nothing wrong with being proud of what you've accomplished as you accomplish it. But early on in your career, I think the appropriate signal to send, if you're going you're going to share and learn out loud and work out loud, the appropriate signal to send is I'm a learner in progress. I'm not a master yet. My goal is mastery. I'm learning. I'm here in the pursuit of excellence, the pursuit of skill, developing my skill set, of attaining more knowledge, of learning from other people. But I don't know much today. And I'm just logging my progress. I'm logging some of the things I'm thinking about. I like to think of this, if you're going to start a blog or podcast, you're going to do anything out loud, a good way to build a good signal early on in your career is kind of to think of it as like a lab notebook or like a project log where you're documenting different experiments you're running, maybe different problems. It could be little things at work, little projects you're working on, and some of the challenges. Maybe you're working with a couple different systems. It could be something simple like I'm trying to figure out how to send an email campaign and that does this XYZ thing. And it's like you could document that. That's it. Like you can draw from your everyday experiences to document your learning. And the best thing to do early on, in the goal of documenting I'm a learner in progress is just to focus on the right fundamentals. And that's building discipline, building good habits, building sort of the right fundamentals, like getting repetition, being somebody who publishes and shares about, the stuff you're working on regularly. Eventually, over enough time, that's going to develop into skill. And by keeping, continuing to get those reps and continuing to focus on learning, eventually that skill plus your repetition, it's going to give way to a valuable reputation that you have and this great sort of repository of content and stuff you built over time. But don't come out swinging, writing all sorts of these like clickbaity headlines, publishing blogs about how you're a, brilliant kid savant or anything like that, because that's the wrong signal at the wrong time in your career. It's feigning mastery, feigning expertise that you haven't earned yet. And I think first and foremost, focus on building value for other people and beginning to build the right discipline, the right habits. Over time, a lot of this stuff's going to figure itself out for you.
Yeah, it's almost like almost the journey, not the destination, right? And it is going to require like a stoic frame of mind, because you can't just go, like you said, every little project, every little reward, you're just shouting it from the rooftop, right? And I think you bring up a great point in the thread where you mentioned not to trap all your equity in a single project or job, right? I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here. Yeah. I agree with that statement. I'm not questioning that statement.
Challenge me, baby.
Yeah, I'm saying that statement it's true, because how would you help out somebody who works so hard to get where they need to get, right? And there's certain circumstances outside their control, like corporate politics or something of that nature. And it almost early on in my career, I had to face that, one of my very, very, very first jobs. And sometimes the brain can create like an unhealthy belief or an unhealthy pattern that don't work hard anymore because you're just going to keep getting screwed, right? Yeah. And I think that's why it's so like you put it into words, right? Like it is so important to not put all your equity in a certain job, right? But this is the part where I would play devil's advocate is if you don't go all in on your project or your job, you can't really perform at your best ability. Yeah. You think that's like check me here for a sec. Like, do you think that's the wrong way of looking at it? Like, am I completely off? Does that make sense? Like,
no, let's hash this out, because you bring up a good point. It's a good challenge flag to throw. You get to keep your time out. This is a good one to discuss. So, don't trap all the equity in a single project, single job, similar, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I think that what I don't mean, this is like a definite paradox, because I could argue both sides of it, and there are valuable takeaways. And I think an important fundamental mindset that it's not mutually exclusive. Like what I mean by this is like not trapping all the equity in a single job is that, say 2 years from now, say you crush it, you absolutely crush it on a job. And 2 years from now, no one except the people you work with know anything about what you're capable of. you have built zero brand for yourself, zero reputation for yourself as a hard worker, as somebody who's capable of solving problems, who knows stuff about XYZ thing. In the world we live in today, when you leave that job and you don't have sort of this digital trail and it doesn't even have to be digital, you haven't built brand equity in your own name and your own capability, you're back at square one in a sense that you now have to go, it's sort of this cold start problem. You now have to go convince other people, complete strangers from scratch of what you're capable of, but they don't have an inside view or inside perspective or some proxy that's a really strong, reliable signal for what you're capable of, for your track record of excellence at a previous company or working on a previous thing. And so what I don't mean though is to always be focused on sort of the grass is always greener on all the other opportunities. You do have to go all in where you're at. You have to make the most of the opportunity at hand, and you have to hit it out of the park if you want those next opportunities. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do that in terms of the opportunity at hand and sort of building momentum for your career on an ongoing basis. And I think that's where you try and strike the balance of, I am a young professional who's learning out loud. I'm sharing my experience. I'm interviewing cool people on a podcast I started so that I can learn from them. Like doing those other things to continue on your personal path of building mastery. That's almost like building this set of assets around you that can speak for yourself when you go out and try to find your next client or try to find your next job. But it doesn't mean always looking for other opportunities and other gigs outside of the day job you have. Even though, like early on in your career, I know that that's tempting, and that's probably another episode altogether about, balancing optionality versus, the current thing that you're working on at hand. So that's how I think about that a little bit more.
For sure. Okay. So it's just where you're putting the equity, put it in your personal brand in a sense. Like, that totally makes sense, right? What would you say? When is the appropriate time? I don't even know if you could, I'm trying to put this art that you're speaking of right now, I'm trying to put into science. I don't even know if it's possible though, because when is there a time where you can just start proclaiming like a certain skill that you have? Because I do agree, early on, it's like, freaking, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And ultimately, I don't even think the best way to build your credibility is almost being vulnerable, right? If you could admit when at any point in your journey that you screwed up this, and this is what you learned from it, ultimately, that's probably would you consider that like a higher signal than just proclaiming like your expertise in sales or negotiate, right?
So I think it's important to make the distinction between confidence and credibility. Confidence is something that you can have independent of what anyone else thinks. It's something that can live inside you. Credibility is something that it really doesn't matter what you think of yourself. That is someone else's perspective of you based on the facts at hand that they have or the information or knowledge they have about your track record. So I think what I'm really getting at is how to sort of encapsulate that credibility early on in your career, and in a way that sets you up sort of for long-term success, in a way that the credibility you're building, it isn't dependent just on what a previous employer says about you or what somebody else's perspective of your LinkedIn profile or your Twitter feed or whatever it is. It's something that sort of speaks for itself, and sort of this is why I like the idea of thinking about sort of what you're trying to build as a body of work. You're not padding your resume. You're not just tossing projects in a portfolio that you use to get hired. You're building a body of work. This is your life's work. It's all the things, it's a collection of the things you're interested in and how you've pursued those interests out in the real world, different, paired with the value you've built in the network you've developed over time by being valuable or participating in the free exchange of interesting ideas with other people. Like all of those things kind of mix together over time to build your credibility or build a strong signal of credibility that other people, that's easier for other people to sort of self-identify. I think credibility, one of the challenges with it though, is if if you're a young adult and you start, you jump onto the socials and you start, blasting from the mountaintops about how much of a badass you are and how successful you are. Most people's natural impulse is like, this kid's full of shit. They don't know anything. Like, who are you? You're some punk kid. What people care about is your results. And they don't just care about your results, especially in the professional world. What people care about most is your ability to repeat results. There's all sorts of people who are one-hit wonders, but
yep,
you're highly suspect early in your career if you're somebody who did something cool one time. What really is valuable over time is building a strong track record. You can't have a really strong track record if it's an isolated incident. But, 2 or 3 really cool things, or, 5 to 7 plus years of really cool, results that you've delivered, that speaks louder than, hey, I built, I did this one thing that took 6 months when I was 18. Now I'm, badass guru. Everybody should pay for my newsletter, that kind of stuff. Like, I don't trust those people inherently because they have a very limited window of opportunity. They have a very limited circumstances under which their success was favorable. So this is kind of, give you kind of like the stock market analogy here is like, everybody can be a good investor on the right day, but the really good investors are the people who make money in up and down markets. And the same thing's kind of true for you in your career. It's, we're not interested in one-hit wonders. We're interested in people who have over time consistently delivered awesome results, have consistently showed up. They've worked their ass off. They've been valuable. They've been dependable. They've learned new things when they were faced with challenges that were unfamiliar, when they were in unfamiliar, uncharted territory. And if you can do those kind of things over and over and over again, the sky is the limit for you. And if you can find a way to build credibility in a way publicly, whether you're on social media or, building your own sort of reputation through like podcasting or content creation or whatever, you're going to have a lot more success if you can manufacture a way for your results to speak for themselves rather than putting so much pressure on people to just take you at your word.
Absolutely. Longevity, like you said, longevity is the signal, right? Like a bunch of people are going to fall out. The investing analogy is great. It's almost like everybody's a real estate fix and flipper when the market's hot. And then when that crap tanks, like it's the true, like tried and true agents that have built that reputation. Like I am the expert in the market, and it takes time, discipline, whatever you want to call it. It's not going to happen overnight, right? What are some actionable steps that you could take? Because a big problem I could see, I could speak this for myself because I've been a jack of all trades my whole career, and it's not a really good feeling, right? I do want to start developing a certain specific expertise that's tied to a specific industry.
Yeah.
What is like, and for others that have a similar goal, what is some actionable steps that you could take to build the right reputation? Because it's also, what if you build the wrong one? Like you just end up in an industry because you've been there for 10 years and you're good at it. But like when you're 40, you're like, dude, I don't even want to do this. And then the midlife crisis hits. How do you avoid that altogether? We're talking a young, a younger audience. So what would you do?
So without giving you, here's a perfect framework, because again, there's infinite different things you could go out into the world as a way of pursuing, something you're interested in. I'm going to give you kind of the two simple things that immediately came to mind. So number one, this is something an early boss told me, early sales job when I was out there. I wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted to have success, and I didn't have the reps yet to just know how to do the job well. And it wasn't just about not understanding how to do sales. It was all the intangibles that come with doing a job well and developing mastery, which is like repetition and practice and getting, gaining confidence and all those things. And a lot of those things are sort of the core fundamentals to building mastery and expertise in any dimension. But this boss told me, he said, don't worry about all that shit. Just go make a mess. Go out there and make a mess. He said, set as many meetings as you can, ask as many questions as you can, read as many books as you can, go chase down as many interesting ideas about the stuff you're working on as you can, but just go make a mess. Stop worrying about the success formula and just go hustle. And you're going to stir up a ton of dust. And eventually that repetition, that's going to help you figure out a lot of the things you don't know today. And it's going to help you work past a lot of the uncertainty and sort of second guessing that's just inherent when you're starting anything out. So go make a mess. That's the first thing you need to do, is get as many repetitions as you can. That's the building block of sort of mastery. The most important sort of first building block of mastery is just get as many reps as you can. Number 2, I think this is just good advice for anybody at any stage in their life. It's just don't be a jackass. Like if you're worried that there's an actual risk of you building a negative reputation, it's probably because deep down there's some part of your personality that you're scared to show in public, or some kind of ulterior motive that you have hidden that you don't want other people to identify. And so what I'd say is like, try and find a way to be interested in other people, be curious about what other people are working on, ask them questions, take an active interest, focus on how to be valuable to other people, but don't just go out into the world about like, how can I get mine? How can I exploit other people's expertise, or how can I, approach relationships transactionally to help have other people, convince other people, persuade them to help me get what I want. Like Zig Ziglar, I think, is the one who says is like the surest way to get what you want in this world is to help other people get what they want. And if you Absolutely. Can do that, like those two things, like go get your reps and don't be a jackass, help other people and take an active interest. Like those two things, I don't want to oversimplify it, but truth be told, like those are two of the most critical things. Is if you can go out there, get a ton of reps, trying whatever it is you're interested in, and you can take an active interest, especially early on in your career, because this is an often overlooked advantage. When you're young, you're just starting out. People who have more experience, they love to help. They want to give back. They were that young punk kid one time too. That's why it's critical not to be a jackass. Like respect other people's time, pay for lunch when you invite them out to lunch, like do the little things about being a good person. Those little things all add up over time. But if you can do those sort of first two dominoes, you can knock those over. The rest of them are going to fall for you.
Boom. Well said. Well said. Help others and don't be a jackass. Some concluding thoughts. So how can somebody start their brand equity in themselves as opposed to a project or a company, like themselves? What can they do today, no matter what their situation is? Like, what's the first step?
I think one of the easiest things you can do is you build a website, or you create some simple way to sort of catalog your own personal growth and hit publish every single day, even if it's little things. Some way to start sort of unifying or bringing all of your brand work, or all of your all the work and projects you're doing unified under sort of one brand. Bonus points if you own the URL for your name. Like I own mitchellearl.com. I've been blogging there for a decade plus. Probably I haven't kept active that whole time, but if you type my name into the search results, that's what shows up. That didn't happen overnight though. And I would say that's one of the most valuable things you can do that really doesn't take that long. You could do it this afternoon. And yeah, you won't show up number one in search results for your name this afternoon. But if you do sort of the small fundamental things right, you get those reps, you start publishing every day, you share your work out loud, you take active interest in other people, you find ways to be valuable. You publish all that on your blog for enough time, like eventually you're on the job market and you're applying for something and you have your resume or you have your website listed on an application or a pitch value proposition you send somebody. And they go type your name into the search bar and the first 10 results are blog posts you published or like podcasts or things that you've created. Wow, that's a really strong impression. I'm probably going to give you the job over every other person that sent me a PDF resume that's got weird naming conventions and from their school email address. Like it's not that hard to be impressive, but you got to put in the hard work early on.
Absolutely. You heard it here first. Make sure you guys subscribe to this methodology. Check out the thread Mitchell got. It is all facts, and we will catch you guys on the next episode.
Thanks as always for listening. Smash the subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment and let us know. We'll be back again soon.